How do you, about coaching people, especially people who are introvert, how do you help people and coach them to communicate and set them up for success?
If someone's an introvert, I'm not going to put them in front of 100 or 1,000 people day one. First thing I'm going to do is probably advise them, hey, find 3 to 5 trusted people on your team. Start small. But past that, the second thing is, don't focus on who's in the room. Focus on what you want to say.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the IWillAim Podcast. Our topic for today is communicate like a champion. Discover practical, proven strategy for enhancing your connection, leadership, and collaboration in workplace. We'll also deep dive on the 28-day challenge with my guest, Eli Champion. Eli, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me, Will.
It's my pleasure. Looking forward to our conversation. Let's start with the first question. Eli, what inspired you to write Communicate Like a Champion?
Yeah, so with Communicate Like a Champion, it actually started as an assignment for my doctorate of business. So I'd been writing, and it was 20-page research paper this, 25-page research paper that, 5-page reflection here, 10-page reflection there. And all of a sudden I get to an assignment. It just says, write an ebook on professional communication. And that's a prompt that'll just kind of sit you back in your seat, like, whoa. And that's when I took a moment, kind of sat there, I talked to my wife. I'm like, if I'm going to write something, I get it's a school assignment. I want to write something to be proud to publish. And then after years, so being from the telecommunications industry, a joke we've said for a long time is, we're in the communications industry and there's little communication in a lot of our companies, right? So I kept seeing some of these issues across the industry, and it'd been a topic of discussion for years and a joke for years. So the opportunity kind of presented itself, and I was like, I think this will be really fun to just run and see where it goes.
As you formulate what you're going to write, as a follow-up question, as you formulate what you want to write for your book, what was the thought process in capturing the key concept to put it together?
I think a lot of it was reflection. So a little over a decade in telecoms, looking back at the times I've seen communication be the failure point, where did I actually think it went wrong, and trying to boil things down to its core. So we'll probably get into it in a little bit, but it's actually a fairly short book, to the point that I had to talk to the professor and the doctor advisor, because I'm like, it feels a little wrong for it to be this short, being just under 40 pages, before you get to some journaling sections. But then at the same time, and that's even the advice they gave me, is, hey, is it more important to meet some kind of page count you think people want to see, or keep your message? So it's kind of the same thing of when I first started, we were about 100 pages, because it's just, let's dump everything I could think of. And then it was even just the self-reflection, the reflection on the events of, if I had to elevator pitch almost, right? Like a under 40-page book, it's almost an elevator pitch of, here's what you need to know about professional communication. If I could give someone just a little bit of advice of where I've seen it go wrong, what could make things go better in most of your day-to-day professional life, that's what I really tried to boil this book down to.
Well, thank you for explaining the thought process. What I really like about it is it's based on experience and reflection. It's powerful. We'll talk a couple of the case or scenario that you actually highlight. You've led corporate team, and you also led community. How have those experiences shaped your communication philosophy? Because they're a bit different. Community communication versus corporate.
Yeah, and I would even argue that every communication in itself is not one size fits all, right? Nothing's ever the same. I think in a community, a lot of times it's much softer, and it all depends on corporate, right? There's a big difference in presenting something to a team versus presenting something to other executives versus presenting something to maybe your board of directors, right? So that's one thing that's, a lot of it boils back to, and one thing I talk about a lot in the book is intentionality. And part of intentionality is, what do you want your audience to know? And part of that's knowing your audience, right? So I've seen everything across the board. Some companies, their board is purely from the industry. That's a very easy discussion. You only have to talk very high level You don't have to simplify anything. Everyone kind of knows what the trends are and knows where you're going. There are some things with especially like small rural telecom and other businesses I've seen where you may have a telecommunications company that's board of directors has a farmer and a real estate agent and a car dealership owner. And with that, you kind of have to take the time to explain some of the things about fiber. And so that's one thing I love about focusing on the intentionality. When you're intentional about communicating, it changes it whether it's to a community, right? If I'm speaking to a church, if I'm speaking to a local school, the intention of what I want to get across should help inform how I inform the audience.
I love the point about intentionality, and it context shift as the audience shifts, and it also makes your communication more powerful. Let's deep dive a little bit to your book. Let's talk about the key principles that you have on your book. If we could sort of walk through the process, and which one resonates with you the most?
Yeah, so I talk about a lot in the book, right? I think the biggest one I've seen that's probably an issue is clarity. And to me, I think clarity falls along with intention, because I think a lot of people do struggle with intention. And if you struggle with the intention of why we're having a meeting, why I'm sending this email, why we're having this conversation, your clarity gets muddled. Because if you don't have a true intention of what you want to get done with the communication, it's hard to be clear on what you're really wanting to communicate. And communication, if we're honest, it's already complicated enough, right? If you had a bad day today, if I had a bad day today, I stubbed my toe before I walked out of the house, whatever it may be, right? That's going to affect my communication, at least for a little while. So keeping those things in mind, I think the biggest thing is ensuring clarity and ensuring there is no gray area, because the more people you communicate with, the more of a chance you have for any of those kind of influencing factors around your communication to be mistooken if you're not extremely clear with your intentions.
Thank you for emphasizing the point on clarity and intention, because those are extremely important in one's ability to communicate better. When communication is made or broken in a situation of leadership, how does one address and fix it?
I think the biggest thing up front is honesty, right? So wherever the ball dropped, it's kind of the old adage, put the big boy pants on, right? If you're leading the project, did you drop the ball? It may be a scheduling, whatever it may be. How many things today are not going to be singly departmental, right? It may roll up to the same VP, it may roll up to the same C-level, but you're usually going to at least have two departments. It may be just project management and sharing, whatever it may be. Across many industries, you see this a lot. I think the biggest thing is just ensuring. I would much rather someone come to me, or I'd much rather myself come in. I think there's been a major miscommunication. Here's where we're supposed to be going. Here's where we're kind of headed. Or, hey, this team's headed this direction. This other team's headed this direction. We need to make a corrective action now. I think the biggest thing is open communication along the way. Because an early miscommunication, if not corrected early and not communicated early, leads to a massive divide. A small crack early on becomes the Grand Canyon, right? Whereas a conversation a week or two in of, hey guys, why is one team pulling east and one team pulling west? You can usually bring things back together. The problem is if communication's sparse or not open and honest, and people don't want to admit that they're not really working in the same direction, 3 months of teams working east and west, and you have a massive divide to overcome now, right?
I love your analogy on a small crack could become a Grand Canyon. That really help people visualize that a small mistake could be corrected. And I love the fact that you mentioned about stepping up and accountability for if something goes wrong, come back to the team and communicating it. How do you, about coaching people, especially people who are introvert, how do you help people and coach them to communicate and set them up for success?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is it's an old adage too, right? So my wife makes fun of me. I'm a big fan of old adages. So how do you eat an elephant, right? One bite at a time. I think the biggest thing is small wins. So if someone's an introvert, I'm not going to put them in front of 100 or 1,000 people day one. First thing I'm going to do is probably advise them, hey, find 3 to 5 trusted people on your team. Start small. But past that, the second thing is don't focus on who's in the room. Focus on what you want to say. Because no matter what whether it's 3 people, 300, 3,000, 30,000 people, focus on your intention. But honestly, to build confidence, the biggest thing along the way is let's kind of baby step this, right? I don't think an introvert is going to probably, there's exceptions to everything. I don't think an introvert is going to successfully go speak at a national conference to 30,000 people overnight and feel comfortable. They may knock it out of the ballpark and then walk backstage and they will be sick to their stomach, right? Not even just for the successfulness of it, but for their own personal health. I think the best thing is finding ways to build wins to build that confidence.
I love the point on building wins and confidence because that snowballs over time. Let's now move on to the 28-day challenge. Is it possible for us to kind of walk week by week? What do they expect on a high level without giving the secret sauce?
Yeah, for sure. So one of the big things is I try to pick just 1 or 2 key principles to kind of focus on for the week. So week 1 is clarity and intent. Week 2, we start looking at some listening and tone. Week 3 is empathy and conflict. And week 4 is tools and follow-up. So each day is just small and actionable. One day it may just be as simple as an email. One day may be an action during a meeting. There are a lot of things I've kind of put in the book to just try to challenge people. Because I will say some of them are less than comfortable, but you generally see results. I'm a big fan of the theory of constructive conflict. I think in business, to be successful, you want to make sure there's constructive conflict. If people are afraid to have opposing ideas in business, it usually leads to yes men and you don't usually get the best idea. That's uncomfortable for a lot of people, right? Whether it's your boss, your coworker, whatever it may be. So there may even be some that kind of poke and prod of, hey, this week, if there's something you don't agree with, let's promote some constructive conflict, right? We'll do it professionally. We'll do it nicely. It'll be constructive. But let's purposefully lean into that uncomfortableness to grow both people, right? To grow both you and your colleague, you and your boss, whatever it may be, right? And let's make sure we're following the right avenue to do it.
If I'm using your book and I went from week 1 to week 2 and I gained some muscle memory in that, and all of a sudden I fall off the crap on week 3, how do you suggest that I get that contract?
Yeah, I think that's the beauty is you could truthfully intermingle the weeks however you wanted to, the week 1 through 4. So a lot of times the reason I've done it the way I do is kind of where I've noticed people's comfort level, all right? So clarity and intent, first thing. It's not a big ask to ask somebody to be a little more clear. If you're calling a meeting or you're the primary host in the meeting, to state your intentions before the meeting. So instead of just sending out and saying Will's weekly Wednesday meeting, to say Will's weekly Wednesday meeting and down below, objectives for the day. Things like that, right? That's not very hard. Listening and tone, we get a little harder because it's hard for us to check our own tone, right? So you're going to have to probably find some trusted people and say, hey, how did my speech come off the other day? Did I come off? Here's how I wanted to be perceived. Here's how I wanted my message to come off. Is that what you got from this? Or did I get this wrong? Same thing with emails, those kind of things, right? One of the worst things with email and text, tones are really hard to perceive. Yes. Because a lot of times, however you're feeling when you receive the text or email is how you're going to perceive the other person sending the text or email. And the same thing with listening. A lot of people don't think about the fact communication, it's a two-way street. You can talk to a brick wall all day. That's not really communication unless there's someone there receiving it, right? So as we start building up, you then move into empathy and conflict. And these are where I see people struggle. And this is where I'm not going to lie. I'm not perfect. I struggle with these at times too. Because there are times where that 1 hour meeting has been an hour and 45 minutes and you just want to go, but you've heard a terrible idea, right? But you let it go for the day. Instead of constructive conflict, it's just like, hey, I know where that's coming from. Here's the experiences I've had. Are we sure that's the best path? And same thing with empathy. Sometimes you get so tied up, man, it's been a rough week. We've had some crazy things happen today. And somebody comes in and needs help with something that's like, hey, I've got my own problems. I just, I'll get to you when I can. And so I kind of purposefully stack. We talked about small wins a moment ago. I kind of stack easiest kind of first where you're kind of just leaning in. You're just explaining yourself a little more, giving people some background. We start moving to, I need to be a little vulnerable, ask people how I'm coming off. make sure I'm actually listening for what they're saying and not what I want to hear. Make sure I'm listening and not just hearing, right? And then moving towards how do I affect others, and also putting a risk out there of myself and not just laying back when I think something's bad. And along with empathy, how do I present this to make sure we don't put the business at risk without putting relationships at risk as well? And then we move into week 4 to kind of give you that relief. It's tools and follow-up. So follow-ups aren't hard. I know some people are like, hey, is it too quick? Should I go ahead and send an email? And same kind of thing with tools. Hey, here's just some constructed tools to review the things we've done for 3 weeks to kind of just keep you going. So it's kind of that book structure, right? Of we're going to have our exposition. We're going to come all the way up to the climax where it's the worst, hardest week for most people. And then we're going to slowly ramp down and start working on things that are a little easier again. But to your point, if somebody fell off the wagon, they could technically hop back in wherever. I would suggest if you hop off midweek 3, you might want to build some small wins again first. But overall, you could technically hop in wherever you wanted to.
I love the fact that even if you fall off the wagon, you could get back on, right?
Yes.
And it's a good emphasis of saying if you fall off for the week 3, you need to build quick wins because you need to build that muscle memory back again. As people are reading your book, there are things they need to unlearn, even though they've been in leadership for many years. What are those things that you think are important for them to unlearn, to relearn? Because that concept isn't really normal to people.
I think 2 things, especially as digital as the world is today. We all know COVID, for better or worse, depend on people's opinions with remote work, all those things. COVID completely changed the business world. At this point, we're 5 years later. We're moving on half a decade, likely forever, right? There will be at least some companies, some are pushing return to office. There will at least be some companies that remain remote or partially remote, hybrid. So 2 big things I would say is I see too many leaders relying on email solely.
Yeah, true.
And I have 2 main issues with that is speed to email. So I know many leaders, I know I struggle with it. I know even my team struggles with, you have thousands of emails a week. And emails very easily get lost in the shuffle. And email's not always most appropriate. It may be a Teams chat, a Slack message, a text message, a phone call. The second thing is with hard conversations. Sometimes I see a hard conversation, whether it is internal facing or customer facing, go out as an email. And I'm like, man, it'd probably be good to help gauge. Video call is the best because we can see each other's faces, because there are a lot of nonverbal cues as well, right? You can kind of watch people's faces. You can watch their body language. But at a minimum, you can hear how someone's saying it, right? Yeah. Versus an email, things generally come off to what we talked about earlier, either harsh and cold, or however I'm feeling, I'm probably going to take that message. So the first thing I'd say is I see too many people truly relying on email as number 1 for nearly every communication. And the other thing I see a lot is in modern days, assuming no news is good news, business has sped up exponentially. There's so many avenues of communication. There's even automated communication. So many businesses use Salesforce now that have automated reminders and all sorts of goodies to help professionals. And I think no news is good news is kind of an old idea and kind of a dead idea at this point, because many times what we've seen, even talking to our vice president of sales, is in the sales cycle, no news is probably bad news more often than not now. A lot of times, if you let that opportunity get cold, the opportunity may be dead. Yeah. And then that's trying to find that balance of not harassing people, but not waiting for news. I think the biggest thing they'll learn is almost the news cycle of communication and what that will really look like in the modern world with even more hybrid workforces. I think those are going to be some of the biggest outdated ideas.
Thank you for sharing those 2 things people need to unlearn. One is heavy reliance on email, and perhaps I would even take him further, chat or messaging or text, right? And the second part is the philosophy of no news is good news. With everything that's changing and going rapidly, how you write your book, the genesis on writing it, we kind of deep dive in the 4-week, 28-day challenge. If there are 3 takeaways from today's episode, what are those 3 takeaways?
Number 1, I've heard it for years. I'm not going to discount that there are natural leaders. The leadership is absolutely a skill. And no matter whether you're a natural born leader and you've heard that your whole life, where you never thought you'd be a leader and you somehow found yourself in that position, or you think you couldn't be a leader and want to be in that position. It is absolutely a skill that can be strengthened, and it's not even big actions. It can be just little things day by day that can make all the difference. The second thing would be things such as clarity and confidence, other what I call pillars of communication, right? They're talked about many, many times in professional books. The one thing I saw very few times in professional books, I've seen it a ton in psychology books, I'm a geek on some things, is listening. A lot of things like to focus on, hey, how do I communicate to others? But to me, just as important as communicating to you is listening to what you have to say for my response to be appropriate as well, right? Whether it be sales, customer relations, even internal messaging, listening, whether it's actual verbal listening or watching body language, is as important as your own communication yourself. And finally, follow-up's not optional. It is absolutely a necessity, and it's a bridge between good intentions and actual alignment between either internal teams or customers. And to the point we talked about earlier, a small crack becoming a Grand Canyon. Sometimes a quick follow-up email after a meeting can be the difference of a week of essentially wasted work, because one team says, oh, we're going west, and the other team says, we're going east. And a follow-up email for someone to question me, wait a second. That's not what I got out of this meeting. Could potentially not only save you time, but a significant amount of expense in business.
Well, thank you for sharing the 3 takeaway. If my audience wants to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, so as of right now, it'll be directly through a LinkedIn, so I'm sure we'll have a link to that. But as of right now, no website just yet. But as of right now, LinkedIn would be a great way to reach me. I'm always available through direct message.
Thank you, Eli, for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you and have a good day.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome.